Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Wave Podcast. This is episode 3 of the podcast, and in this episode, we're going to go over the reward predictions for the NBA, Elimination Chamber review, and at the very end, we're going to do an NFL draft, mock draft of round 1. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. So, to start off the show, we're going to do award predictions for the NBA. So starting off with Coach of the Year, in my opinion, it should be J.J. Redick. This man, in his first year, already established a defensive mindset for this team, especially when Anthony Davis was there. They were at least top 10. But ever since the All-Star break, after they acquired Luka, everybody thought that the defense was just going to fall off because Luka was this liability on defense, which he is. I won't lie, he is very lazy on that side of the ball. But when you look at their defensive rating since the All-Star break, they are top 5. Not to mention they've had the best record since the All-Star break and look like one of the hottest teams in the NBA. And that's all because of J.J. Redick. Not to mention that his offensive scheme is just as lethal as his defense. I mean, you've got guys creating shots for other guys that are not named Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, and LeBron James. I mean, it just looks like J.J. Redick has instilled a culture into this team that screams, we're ready to buy in and we're ready to be contenders. And when you have a roster that is headlined by a 40-year-old and a 25-year-old playing at elite levels, especially on both sides of the ball, I mean, that's just a recipe for greatness. And with them now being second in the West behind Oklahoma, I mean, this team is set up perfectly. They can make a run to the Western Conference Finals. Now, sure, they may have to go through Denver to get there, but I don't see why they couldn't do it. So, in my opinion, Coach of the Year should go to J.J. Redick just for instilling a culture into this team that just last year just looked like a mediocre team, and it looked like this year there was doubts, but now this team is very lethal because of J.J. Redick. Going into MIP, you can look at a lot of guys, but I think the clear-cut favorite, in my opinion, should be Norman Powell. Now, with this team losing Paul George in free agency and the uncertainty of whether Kawhi was going to play this year or not, it just had a lot of people doubting the Clippers if they were even going to be a playoff contender. Now, sure, James Harden is James Harden, but everybody knows that he's not the same James Harden that he used to be. So there was definitely some doubts that with James Harden being your best player coming into this season. But the way that Norman Powell stepped up this season and is continuously stepping up almost every single game, I mean, it just screams MIP. Last year, this man averaged 13.9 points per game, and now he's averaging 23.8. That is a 10-point jump from last season. And he's doing it just as efficiently as he did last year. And last year, he finished 4th in Sixth Man of the Year. So for this man to step up the way that he did for this Clippers team that desperately needed somebody to step up alongside James Harden, who, by the way, dropped a 50-point bomb the other night. Shout out James Harden. They desperately needed this man. They needed him to revert back to his old Toronto days where this man was just dropping buckets. And clearly he has been. So in my opinion, the MIP award has been tarnished. And when you look at guys like Norman Powell, the award was made for guys like him. It's not made for people like John Morant or Cade Cunningham because those guys were already top picks and we knew the potential that those guys had. They should not be in MIP conversations in year 2 when we know they could jump up to superstardom. So the last couple of years it has been tarnished, but with Norman Powell playing the way that he is playing right now, I think it's a no-brainer. MIP should go to Norman Powell just based off of what he's had to do for this Clippers team and what he is continuously doing for this Clippers team just to keep them in playoff contention. So once again, my MIP is Norman Powell. Now, 6 men of the year, you can go multiple players here. You could go with Naz Reid. You could go with DeAndre Hunter, who I think has a very strong case for this award. But I think the guy that really does deserve it is Peyton Pritchard, who the other night gave you 41 and wasn't even that, or no, he gave you 41 plus. I think Derek White scored 41, but he scored more than Derek White. When you have a guy like that can come off your bench and give you 41 plus, I mean, come on. You can't ask for anything better than that. This man is averaging 14 points per game, 3.5 assists, 3.8 rebounds, and he's shooting the ball at an efficient rate. I mean, the way that this man has improved year after year, you could also make the case for him to be MIP. But with him coming off the bench, this is exactly what what the Celtics needed from Peyton Pritchard was to take that next step in leading the bench. And I mean, it's exactly what they asked for. Peyton Pritchard is the guy to lead the bench and just to go out there and get buckets. You don't need your 6 man to facilitate or create open shots for somebody else. Just let that man go out there and shoot the ball. Just let him go out there and get buckets. And that's exactly what Peyton Pritchard is doing. And he's doing it, like I said, at a very efficient rate. And if he can keep this up, I don't see why the Celtics can't repeat, especially with not only him balling, but Kristaps is balling, Derek White. I mean, you just got so many key players on this team that are contributing at a very high level, especially Peyton Pritchard, who I also think will be 6 man of the year. Now, with Victor Wembanyama being out for the rest of the season, who was the clear-cut favorite for Defensive Player of the Year, just having a phenomenal, all-time great defensive season. With him being out, I think the clear-cut favorite should be Evan Mobley. I mean, this man is leading a top 3 defensive team. He is pretty much the anchor right beside Jared Allen in this defensive team, averaging 1.6 blocks per game and holding his opponents to a very low percentage at the rim. I mean, he's just the guy that you want him to be when you need a defensive anchor to hold down the paint. He is just wreaking havoc on anybody that comes into that paint. Not to mention, he's a pretty good perimeter defender. Now, with me, I like big men or wings who can defend multiple positions, and Evan Mobley is definitely one of those guys. Now, sure, you can make the argument for Bam Adebayo, but with the way that their season has been going, it's kind of hard to give the award to somebody whose team is not performing at a high defensive play, for a lack of words. So I think it fits that Evan Mobley should get this award, and deservingly. I mean, this season he has just improved tremendously, not only on the defensive side, but also on the offensive side. He was an all-star this year because, I mean, the team has just been amazing. It's just like the Lakers. Everybody's bought in. They're ready to win a championship. And like I said in one of my TikToks at the Wave pod, this is probably the only chance that Cleveland can get to win a championship, especially with Boston being so good this year. But some people argue that Cleveland is at their level. I could see why people argue that, but for me personally, I think Boston is just in a different tier. It really doesn't even matter their ranking in the conference. But with Evan Mobley playing this way, not only offensively but defensively, it just speaks to the culture that this Cleveland team embodies. Their number one priority is smothering you on defense and creating havoc in any way, shape, or form. And Evan Mobley is the leader in that defensive team. So I don't think anybody else deserves this award other than Evan Mobley. Now it's time to get into the controversial award, the MVP. To me, this is clearly between two men, Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, when you look at the Kia MVP ladder, the top 5 players that we have here are LeBron James. By the way, shout out LeBron, 40 years old, and he's still in MVP talks. I mean, it's just remarkable. Number 4, we have Jason Tatum, who I think isn't getting enough attention for being the leader of the NBA, the former, well, not really former, but defending NBA champions. But I can understand why he is only 4. Number 3, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Milwaukee's having a bounce back year. Obviously, Giannis should be in MVP talks. But the top 2 players, number 2, Nikola Jokic, and number 1, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, this is being recorded on Friday. Nikola Jokic just put up the first stat line in where he dropped 30 points, 20 rebounds, and 20 assists. That is the first time anybody has ever done that. Now, you could just go from there and be like, all right, he clearly deserves the MVP award. Quite frankly, I wouldn't even be mad at it. This man goes out there and nonchalantly just plays basketball. He does not care. And that is scary. Imagine if this man cared about playing basketball. Could you imagine the numbers that he would put up? It would be Wilt-esque. This man would be averaging 50. And that's not even an exaggeration. He would be averaging a 50-point triple-double if this man cared. Right now, he is averaging 28.8 points per game, 12.8 rebounds per game, and 10.4 assists. Lost for words. He is a center putting up these numbers nonchalantly. Now, I'm sure after the day, he's probably going to move up to number 1. And him and Shai are just going to flip-flop until the very end of the season. But, in my opinion, I believe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should win MVP. He's averaging 32.8 points per game, 5.1 rebounds per game, and 6.2 assists per game. He is leading the best offense in the league and a top 5 defense in the league. When you put that together with him having a career year where he is shooting the ball in the most efficient season he has had ever in his career so far, plus the 3-point percentage, second best in his career. He went from averaging only 3.6 3-pointers attempted to now 5.7 and shooting it at a very high rate. I mean, you can't ask for anything more, especially with a guy that's on the best team in the NBA, second best team in the NBA. I mean, when you look at this man's stats throughout his career, he went from 10.8 to 19 points, 23.7, 24.5, 31, 31.4, 30.1, 32.8. He is constantly getting better every single year. Now, sure, you can make the argument for Nikola Jokic getting better every single year too. But when we watch the game, we're expecting Nikola Jokic to put up these crazy numbers every single night. With Shea, you're on a 50-point game watch every night. Now, sure, you could probably say that for Nikola Jokic too. But Shea went from not having a 50-point game his whole career to now he has 4 this season. And when he goes out there and he plays the game, it's kind of like Jokic. It's effortless. He can get to a spot in the mid-range game and knock it down at the most efficient rate that we have ever seen anybody shoot the mid-range shot. And we've seen Dwayne Wade. We've seen DeMar DeRozan. Some of the greatest mid-range shooters ever. Shea obviously is up there now. But when you watch this man play basketball, he is playing basketball. He's going out there and dropping 50 on anybody. It don't matter who you put on him. You can put Scottie Pippen on him, and I guarantee you he will give him 45 at a very high rate. This man is having one of the best offensive seasons we have ever seen by a superstar. I'll just go ahead and say it. He's having a top 5 offensive season of all time. That's how good this man has been. So in my eyes, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should be the MVP. But if Nikola Jokic were to win it, I would not be upset. But if he does win it, Shai's going to come next season, and he's going to take that MVP. So, to recap our award predictions, Coach of the Year, J.J. Redick. Most Improved Player, Norman Powell. Sixth Man of the Year, Peyton Pritchard. Defensive Player of the Year, Evan Mobley. And MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who you have for some of these awards. Do you have somebody different? Do you have the same list? Give me your reasons why you have somebody different like MVP, why you have Jokic as the MVP. Now, normally I would have the WWE segment last, but I'm going to plug it in second because we have to react to one specific segment from Elimination Chamber. WWE pulled off what most thought was impossible. John Cena is now a heel. Not only is he a heel, but now he is aligned with The Rock, the final boss, the man that wanted Cody Rhodes' soul, and he wanted Cody Rhodes to be his champion. John Cena has now joined forces with him. Now, there's been many speculations going around on X/Twitter that when Dwayne came back to WWE, he held this up. 3. But When he did this and put up 2, it got people thinking, was John Cena one of the guys to sell their soul to The Rock? Now, the other 2, we don't really know. Some people are thinking that one of them will be Roman Reigns. I kind of think it will be Roman Reigns and Randy Orton. But we'll probably soon find out. I don't know where the storyline goes because it's so unpredictable now. Like, is the farewell tour over? Is Cena going to win his 17th title and just hold on to it until he feels like he wants to just relinquish it? Because if you're aligned with The Rock, I mean, my gosh, there's nobody that can beat you. It's the final boss. It's the final boss and John Cena together. I don't think people are realizing that. John Cena and The Rock are partners. Nobody saw this coming. My jaw literally dropped when I saw John Cena low blow Cody Rhodes and make him bleed in the middle of the ring to end the pay-per-view. Never in a million years would I think Triple H would have the cojones to turn John Cena heel during his farewell tour. Now, do I think this is going to be a long-lasting thing? I don't think so. I think it'll last till SummerSlam, where Cena turns on The Rock, turns babyface, loses the title to, I say, Randy or somebody. Maybe it goes back to Cody Rhodes, and then that's when Cena retires and rides off into the sunset to Hollywood. But not only did that happen, Jade Cargill came back and attacked Naomi. Now, this is being recorded after the Friday Night SmackDown tonight, where Naomi pretty much admitted to attacking Jade Cargill a couple months ago. So, we're probably going to get a Naomi versus Jade Cargill at WrestleMania, which I'm all for. I would love to see that. Now, with Bianca Belair facing Io Sky at WrestleMania for the WWE Women's World Heavyweight Championship, I'm predicting Bianca. I'm predicting that Bianca will win the championship and will face whoever wins between Jade and Naomi in the next pay-per-view. But I want to talk about one man real quick. CM Punk. I feel awful for CM Punk. I almost really wanted CM Punk to win this match because this man deserves to main event WrestleMania. He really does. And I don't hate that he's rivaling with Seth Rollins. I think it's going to be an amazing match when they face off at WrestleMania. I mean, it's going to be an amazing match whenever they face each other on Raw this coming up Monday in a steel cage match. That's going to be phenomenal. But I think the feud has to end at WrestleMania in a no-holds-barred match where CM Punk comes up as the victor. And he's got to stick around for one more year, dude. He has to. He has to main event at least night one of WrestleMania. But man, I think that was one of the better pay-per-views that Triple H has ever put together. And I just cannot wait to see what the future holds with John Cena and The Rock and Cody Rhodes. So in the last segment of the podcast, we're going to do an NFL mock draft of round 1. And with the first overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select Cam Ward. I just think Cam Ward is the clear-cut number 1 overall pick for Tennessee. It just makes sense for Tennessee because they need the true number 1 guy. They need a franchise quarterback more than ever. I mean, they went years where Ryan Tannehill was their starting quarterback. Not saying that Ryan Tannehill is a bad quarterback, but, I mean, he did play all right. I'll say that. But this last season, oh boy, when you had quarterback play from a guy like Will Levis, man, was that was hard to watch. I'm not even gonna lie. He deserved to be benched. But clear cut, number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward is going to Tennessee. With the number 2 overall pick, Cleveland Browns will be selecting Abdul Carter. Now, sure, the surgery does concern me a little bit, but when you have a guy as talented as Abdul Carter is and the potential that he is showing, I think it just makes sense for Cleveland to make this gamble and try to bolster up your defense, especially when Myles Garrett has asked for a trade out. You have to find his replacement, and you have to find it fast. So I think Abdul Carter makes total sense for this team. Now, with the 3rd overall pick, the Giants could go many places here. But I think Travis Hunter makes the most sense here. You get a guy that could play both sides of the ball, but I think he is more effective when he plays cornerback. He is a better corner than he is a wide receiver. He's a better shutdown. He's just better on the defensive side. And with New York supposedly being in talks or being in rumors that they're going to go after Aaron Rodgers for their starting quarterback position, I think you have to bolster up the defensive side and try to get as much talent as you can, because Dable and all the front office guys, this is probably their last year together. So getting Travis Hunter in this draft, massive W for this franchise. With the 4th overall pick, the New England Patriots will select Will Campbell. Obviously, Will Campbell is the best, in my opinion, the best offensive lineman in this draft. His footwork is amazing. His strength, his willpower to just hold off defenders from getting to the quarterback, it would help out tremendously with Drake May's development. Not to mention that they're going to heavily pursue Chris Godwin in free agency, so I think you have to bolster up the offensive line as much as you can. So I think Will Campbell makes a lot of sense for them. Now, Jacksonville. In many ways, Jacksonville kind of needs the same thing like New England. But I think they take a gamble here. You got a guy like Will Johnson that is sitting there and waiting to be picked. But I don't think they go Will Johnson. I think they take Mike Green with the 5th overall pick. Now, yes, you might be asking, but don't they already have Walker as their edge? They do, but he hasn't been showing a whole lot. Mike Green despite all the controversies that's going on outside of football, he makes the most sense for Jacksonville. He brings pass rush. He brings this disruptiveness to the defensive side of Jacksonville. Really, truly, I don't think Jacksonville could screw up this pick because they just need help all around, especially when they just traded Christian Kirk. So, I mean, they could even go with Ted McMillan in that pick. But I just think it makes the most sense for Jacksonville to go out and get Mike Green, who has tremendous potential to be a top 15 defensive end in the league in the coming years. So Mike Green is heading to Jacksonville. Now, this is a dream come true for Las Vegas Raiders fans out there. With the 6th overall pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is the most accurate quarterback in this draft with 74%. Led FBS in that stat. Las Vegas has fell in love with this man the whole year. Every time they lost, Shedeur Sanders would tweet out, "Thank God," because it just made them, it put them in a better position to draft him and pick number 6. He falls perfectly to them. I just think it makes sense for both teams or both sides that they come together, develop this young man. And with the recent trade with Geno Smith to be their starting quarterback, I think Shedeur's going to sit for at least a year or two, which I think he needs to, because there's a lot of things that he does need to improve in his game, especially when he tries to make plays that don't need to be made. He was sacked 94 times during the season, and most of that was when he didn't need to make a play. He ran right into the defender. So I think if he sits for a year or two and learns how to not really game manage, but just calm down, relax, and just play how you normally play and not panic, I think this is a phenomenal pick by Oakland. Now, with the 7th overall pick, the New York Jets select Mason Graham out of Michigan. You can make the argument that he is probably the best interior defensive lineman in this draft. He brings a disruptive run defense to the Jets that desperately need it. Not to mention he can pair up with Quinnen Williams and probably be the best duo on the defensive line. So I think it just makes total sense for Mason Graham to head to New York. And especially with a team that is trying to find its way from losing Aaron Rodgers and losing Devontae Adams. They just have to find a way to restart, and Mason Graham is a perfect place to start. Now, with the 8th overall pick, the Carolina Panthers select Shamar Stewart. He impressed a lot of people at the NFL Combine. Probably one of the best defensive NFL Combines that we've seen in a very long time. Shamar Stewart has jumped up tremendously on everybody's draft board, and I think this is a steal for Carolina because the talent that Shamar Stewart has and the potential that he has is definitely top 5 in this draft. This just makes Carolina even better. And with the year that they had last year, the way that they ended it, this could possibly put them in the playoff contention. Now, it's definitely not going to put them in division championship contention because I think Tampa Bay is going to win it again next year. But this puts them in a perfect spot for the future. It makes their defense even better. So Shamar Stewart to Carolina is amazing. Now, the 9th overall pick, my New Orleans Saints will be selecting Ashton Jeanty. Now, I know what you're thinking. You already have Alvin Kamara. Why would you need Ashton Jeanty? Well, Alvin Kamara is getting up there in age. Yes, he had an amazing year last year until he got injured. But I think drafting Ashton Jeanty, pairing him with Alvin Kamara, it could add more years to Alvin Kamara's career, and you can have that 1-2 punch like with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I really think that duo could be just like those two. So Ashton Jeanty to New Orleans makes perfect sense to me. It just opens up that offense, especially when Spencer Rattler is going to be our projected starting quarterback, which I love. I want him to be our starting quarterback so bad, and it looks like it is going to happen. Praise the Lord, because I am tired of Derek Carr being my starting quarterback, and I'm tired of mediocre quarterback play from that position. I think Spencer Rattler deserves to be our starting quarterback, and drafting somebody like Ashton Jeanty to put in the backfield with him, phenomenal. Phenomenal. With the 10th overall pick, y'all might be saying, where's this dude? Why hasn't he been drafted yet? This is where he's going to get drafted. Armand Membu is going to Chicago. He was the fastest tackle in this draft combine by a long shot. He is the most athletic tackle in this draft. And the fact that he has fallen to Chicago, I mean, Chicago fans should be cheering right now. Not only have they already went out and got Joe Thuney, but they're continuously trying to trade for more offensive linemen because last year was just abysmal. The offensive line sucked. It was awful. I do not blame Caleb Williams at all for the season that he had last year because if you watched Chicago games, it was just awful from like week 5 until the very end of the season. This man was under pressure 24/7. So getting a guy like Armand Membu this late in the draft, phenomenal pick. With the 11th overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Mykel Williams. Now, for the longest time, Mykel Williams was a top 5 projected overall pick, but he kind of slid a little bit because he didn't participate in this year's combine. Obviously, that's going to make you slide a little bit. I think this is a phenomenal pick by San Francisco. It bolsters that defense. It definitely makes them younger. It makes them more versatile because Mykel Williams, even though he didn't participate in this draft combine, he's still one of the more athletic defensive ends that we have seen in a very long time. I think this man can even play linebacker if he really wanted to. But having him coming off the edge with Nick Bosa. I think that's a phenomenal duo. It's just going to make that defense even better. And I think it's going to put them in a position to win even more games than they did last year. Last year was just an anomaly. I don't expect them to be like that this year. I expect them to be in contention to win their division and be one of the better teams in the NFC. With the 12th overall pick, the Dallas Cowboys are going to select Luther Burden III. Now, as a Mizzou fan, watching Mizzou games, I got frustrated with Brady Cook and Coach Drink because this man did not get involved in the offense like he should have. I mean, the talent that this guy has is otherworldly. Him going to Dallas and being paired up with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, dare I say, Dallas Cowboys fans, y'all may be chanting, "This is our year." I am very high on Luther Burden. I think he is going to be a top 10 wide receiver in this league for sure, without a shadow of without a doubt. This man will be a top 10 wide receiver in this league. You can quote me on that. With the 13th overall pick, the Miami Dolphins will be selecting Malachi Starks. Now, Caden, you might be asking me, why are you projecting that Miami is going to draft a safety when they're more than likely going to re-sign Javon Holland? That's exactly why I want them to draft a safety. They need to put another guy right beside Javon Holland. And even if they don't re-sign Javon Holland, I think Malachi Starks is the perfect replacement for him. But if you have Malachi Starks and Javon Holland right beside each other, I think it can bolster the defense even more, make them not as prone to get beat over the top. This defense got beat over the top, I don't know how many times in countless games. It was just embarrassing. But when you add a guy like Malachi Starks, it just makes the defense even better in my eyes. With the 14th overall pick, the Indianapolis Colts select Tyler Warren, the best tight end in the draft for sure. Probably the biggest need for Indianapolis. And it also gives Anthony Richardson another weapon. I think this is Anthony Richardson's last season to prove that he can be a franchise quarterback, and giving him all the weapons that he needs to succeed should be the Colts' number one priority this offseason. So selecting Tyler Warren at this pick, it just makes total sense for the development of Anthony Richardson. The Atlanta Falcons will be selecting Jahdae Barron. I'll say this, they probably found their franchise quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. The way that he played towards the end of the season, it looked like he should have been the starting quarterback at the start of the season. So I think they go on the defensive side. I think they get probably the best corner, if not the second best corner in this draft. Definitely the most athletic corner in this draft in Jahdae Barron. And pair him up with Terrell Jr., I think it's a great duo for that team. Now, with the 16th overall pick, The Arizona Cardinals will be selecting James Pierce Jr. In my opinion, James Pierce Jr. is the best edge in this draft, but that's just my opinion. This man is probably one of the more athletic defensive ends, if not the best or the most athletic defensive end in this draft. He brings a pass rush that it's rarely seen in a young man like this. James Pierce Jr. going to Arizona, I think it's just a perfect fit for this team. 17th overall pick belongs to the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think they pick Will Johnson here. Now, Will Johnson sliding all the way down to the 17th overall pick does not shock me. If anybody had to slide down this far, I think it had to be Will Johnson. Some people say he is the best corner in this draft. I can't say I disagree. He is definitely one of the more athletic corners. I think Jahan Barron is definitely more athletic than him, for sure. But Will Johnson going to Cincinnati, making that defense, I mean, it don't take much to make that defense better. But Will Johnson going there obviously makes them a heck of a lot better. Number 18, the Seattle Seahawks. This is tricky because now they don't have a quarterback. So, do they reach and go for a quarterback here? Or should they still try to bolster the defense? Now, sure, we've had a lot of defensive picks in the first round, but I mean, that's just how this draft is. This draft is very defensive heavy. So, in my eyes, I do believe that they go defense, but I'm really, really trying to figure out who would be like the best pick for them. It's kind of between either Maxwell Harrison or Nick from South Carolina. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. Oh man, this is tough. This is tough. The other ones were kind of easy, but this one is tough. I think they go Maxwell Harrison. Maxwell Harrison he was probably the biggest riser in the draft combine. He had an amazing draft combine. Amazing draft combine. So it makes the 19th pick even easier for me, and it makes total sense for this team. I think they pick the safety out of South Carolina, Nick Emmanwori. That is not how you say it, but that's how I'm going to say it. So they need to continue to make that defense better and continue to put talent on this roster. Mike Evans is getting older. You're probably going to lose Chris Godwin in the offseason, but I think you need to stick on the defensive side and continue to just add the best talent. And Nick definitely is the best talent available for their need. Now, with the 20th overall pick, the Denver Broncos add another weapon for Bo Nix. Tet McMillan is going to Denver. I think Denver gets the biggest steal in this draft at Tet McMillan. His talent on the wide receiver side, it is matched with Luther Burden in my eyes. It's 1A, 1B. Luther Burden, Tet McMillan. I think Denver adding this man to this roster is just going to make Bo Nix even better next year. and it's going to even open up the offense even more. With the 21st overall pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Kelvin Banks Jr. I think the offensive line needs to be addressed for sure for Pittsburgh. Definitely quarterback is a question mark. Do you bring back Justin Fields? I think yes, you do bring back Justin Fields. He, in my opinion, puts you in the best uh, opportunity to win games. And he showed flashes of being, dare I say, a franchise quarterback. So you bring back Justin Fields, you give him talent on the offensive line, you give him help on the offensive line. It just makes sense for both parties. With the 22nd overall pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Amarian Hampton. This is another guy that had a great draft combine and another guy that rose from the draft combine. He fits well with the Chargers. He's a great pass catcher, and he can run downhill. I think it's going to make this offense better, and it adds another weapon for Justin Herbert. I think this year Los Angeles is going to take a leap. In my eyes, I think they finish second in the division, right behind, obviously, Kansas City. But when you add talent like Amarian Hampton to this team that already has a pretty good offense, sure, you worry about the defensive side because you're going to lose Joey Bosa. You're not sure if you can bring back Khalil Mack, but I think Amarian Hampton is the best available talent. So why not just pick the best available? With Green Bay, it's tough because they definitely need wide receiver, but they also need offensive line help. Not to mention defensive side needs a lot of help. So why not draft Walter Nolan? That was a big drop for Walter Nolan because coming into this draft, he was projected a top 15 pick, and Green Bay gets him at number 23, bolsters that defense, brings in a pass rushing ability that is very rare in an interior defensive lineman. And like other guys or like other teams in this draft, Green Bay gets the steal. Now, Minnesota. This is where it gets a little crazy. I think Minnesota will draft Jalen Walker. The defense was already great last year, and now adding Jalen Walker to this team makes it even better. With the 25th overall pick, the Houston Texans select. Ooh, this is tough. This is tough. They don't need defensive help, in my opinion. Man, this is tough. This is tough. This is tough. It's just a lot of defensive guys on here. They just don't need help on defense. Man. They just traded for Christian Kirk, so I don't think they're going to go Christian Kirk. They're going to take Josh Simmons. They definitely still need help on the offensive side or the offensive line side, So I think taking Josh Simmons there makes sense. Bolsters up that offensive line, helps CJ Stroud with more time in the pocket to find more guys downfield. And it's what they want to do on offense. Take the deep shot, take the highlight play, and just run with it. LA, I think it's a no-brainer. Jahad Campbell is still here. He's going to go to LA. With LA re-signing Matthew Stafford and possibly going to sign Devontae Adams, I think they do focus on the defensive side. Jahad Campbell is sitting there waiting. Why not pick him up? Baltimore, I think they do what Kansas City did last year, and they draft the fastest wide receiver. Matthew Golden is going to Baltimore. Just like with Denver, give all the weapons that you can find to Lamar Jackson and continue to allow him to be an amazing quarterback. With the 28th overall pick, the Detroit Lions are going to select Nick Scorton. This adds another pass rusher to the other side of the ball with alongside not Trey Henderson. Oh, I can't even think of his name now, but y'all know who I'm talking about. This defense got exposed against Washington because there was little to no pass rushes. They barely got to Jaden Daniels. I mean, obviously, Washington got exposed on the defensive side too. But I think if they would have had an extra pass rush on the other side of that ball, I think they would have came out and won the game and possibly went to the Super Bowl. And I take that back. Philly was just on a different level. But adding Nick Scorton to this defense, adding more talent, because now it's getting to the point to where Detroit, your window is starting to close. Where do you go? Do you try to sign Jared Goff to a long-term extension? I mean, it's just a lot of question marks that are going to follow after this season. So you try to add talent as much as you can through the draft. With the 29th overall pick, the Washington Commanders will take Trayvon Henderson. I think it just makes sense to add more guys to that offensive side, especially when you just traded for Deebo Samuel. You want to give all the weapons to Jaden Daniels and make him one of the more elite quarterbacks in the league. And when you continue to do that, I honestly think he is going to have an MVP type year. With the 30th overall pick in the NFL draft, I think Buffalo is going to take Emeka Egbuka. Now, last year, this man was projected to be a top 10 pick, but because of everybody else playing better, and I mean, that's not a shot at him at all, he's going to fall. And I think where Buffalo is, grabbing him at this pick is a tremendous get, especially when you possibly are going to lose Amari Cooper. I think they can re-sign Amari Cooper, so getting him with Emeka Egbuka, it's just going to create more offensive openness for Josh Allen and whoever the offensive coordinator is going to be. With the 31st overall pick, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to select Gray Zabel. You need to add offensive line help to this team. Sure, I think you can make the argument that defense is more important for this team, but you also need to bolster up the trenches because that's where you got beat the most. It was pass rush even when they were only sending 4. They just got back there. Philly just got back there every single time. So, Gray Zabel at the 31st overall pick, amazing pickup for Kansas City. To close out the NFL draft first round, the Philadelphia Eagles will be selecting Landon Jackson. I think Landon Jackson is one of the more underrated prospects in this draft. And yet again, the Philadelphia Eagles find a way to add even more talent to this team. It just makes the most sense to me. Continue to add talent to that defensive side, continue to bolster up the trenches, and continue to put pressure on the quarterback. That was my round 1 mock draft. Let me know in the comments below if you have guys that should have been in the first round that fell into the second round from my mock draft. Let me know if you think this was a smart draft or if you think I'm an idiot. Let me know in the comment. Thank you all so much for watching episode 3 of the Wave Podcast. Now, I know this is more of a lengthier episode, but I think it's the most fun that we've had here so far. So if you don't mind, leave a like, subscribe, comment what you thought your favorite segment was. Leave your thoughts down below as well, and I'll see you next weekend.